Well, we'll have to move to other news now. There have been calls for those involved in food production to come up with new sustainable ways to cope with demand. Experts believe the food supply of our continent is going to require greener methods of production. Andrew Dale is the Africa Assurance Partner for PwC. Andrew, good afternoon to you. If you look at the way that the climate of our continent is changing, just in our own country, we see that. How is farming going to have to change?
Hi, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to your viewers and your listeners. So, I think if you look at the climate change that we've been seeing, I mean, just in South Africa and some of our neighboring countries, we've been heavily impacted by the impacts of El Nino, which has also been very severe over February specifically, where we had extremely hot temperatures and extremely little or low rainfall. So there's definitely a big impact there, and we have to look at, when it comes to our different farming entities and businesses, they will have to see how can they be more effective and more efficient to improve their outputs, looking at the types of crops that they grow, how do they apply elements of what's known as precision farming, and then also eco-farming, and how it all goes in terms of treating your soil, and how that will have then an impact on the outputs that you'll get in terms of your harvest. So there's a significant number of levers that will have an impact in terms of your food security and your losses, but I can delve into that a bit later as well.
I presume one of the things is that you'll have to find ways of farming using less water. Yes, that is definitely going to be a big impact. So essentially it's how do you utilize that water responsibly in terms of recyclable options, and also growing crops that are more drought resilient, and that can also produce then greater outputs in warmer, drier temperatures. So there's a fair number of options there, but that does remain a really large challenge, especially on a continent like Africa, and especially towards our sort of central western areas where we do experience large sort of drought areas and also drier climate impact as well. Andrew, one of the other things we can do is substitute what we eat. In other words, eat different things. And I'm going to be extremely unpopular for saying this, but if we all stopped eating meat, we would save a lot of money, a lot of water, and a lot of food.
Potentially. I know that is a very, myself also being a meat eater, that is often frowned upon in a lot of circles, because it has very wide impacts in terms of our economy and everything to do with cattle and meat and sheep and so forth. But I think the downside is also where will you get certain nutrients in terms of proteins, etc. And then there's also a big choice from your retailers as well, and individuals that would prefer to pay that premium for the meat rather than the meat substitute. So that is a very tricky one to deal with, but at least there are still a number of other opportunities. There's alternative crops that one can have a look at as well. And then there's also, things like we've mentioned in terms of your precision farming and utilization of various specialists, and also things like artificial intelligence that can help you to assess what's going on beneath the soil and then also above your crops, so that you can take the appropriate action as well.
Is there a space for government to change regulations to encourage more sustainable farming?
Definitely. I think there's always a role that government can play and does play. And for me, what's really important is how does government and the private sector, and also a number of your sort of agri-related organizations, how do they work together to manage and implement these programs and these policies? Because there's certain things that government does and can do, but I think there's definitely a lot of reliance and specialism that will then come from the private sector. And it's a case of how do these parties work together to get to a favorable and then sustainable outcome for agriculture in the future. And Andrew, I think a lot of that also lies in having a good project management as well.
Andrew Dale, thank you. Africa Assurance Partner at PwC. Do appreciate the time.